of Elliot Spitzer,
Mm-hmm.
who was governor for about an hour and a half.
His name sounds familiar.
Yeah, and then his successor, David Patterson. I was a deputy commissioner for criminal justice programs in New York State, and then I came here, explained to the Governor Nixon, and his staff. I said, I'm a national expert in criminal justice programming and reducing crime, and he said, that's great, go work at the Department of Natural Resources. So that's what I did. And I worked there for a while. And then went over to the Department of Economic Development for a few months during in the months following MAMTech, if you recall that. And
Sure.
and then was only there for maybe 2 or 3 months before being asked to serve as the governor's deputy general counsel.
So, for the past 4 years,
Yeah.
you've been in this role.
Yes.
But we learned last week you're resigning, and we're hoping you'll tell the readers why.
Sure. This is almost entirely a personal decision. I'm from New York. My kid brother has a young family there. My wife's sister, although she's from here, her sister, her only sibling, their family pastors a small church in upstate New York. So that's where our siblings are. That's where my children's cousins are. And our decision is, if we're going to get back east to be with family, the decision needed to be made before my son starts high school, as opposed to making him leave sometime during high school. And so I understand that's not a very, sexy reason for leaving, and there's no scandal or there's no disappointment with the job or frustrations or anything like that. It's just a kind of a family decision that a married couple makes, irrespective of careers and that kind of thing, because we both like our current positions and we feel like we're doing some good in our current positions, but it's primarily for family reasons.
So I'm told when you move to New York, you're going to be the director of the Adirondack Mountain Club?
Yeah. So
can you tell the readers a little bit about your role in that and what that organization does?
Sure.
I did my homework.
Yeah. So the Adirondack Mountain Club has been around for about 100 years, and it's the only nonprofit in New York State that advocates for protecting and preserving New York's wildlands and waterways. And a lot of people don't know that the largest state park in America is in New York. It's 6 million acres, about the size of Vermont, and it's a national gem. And surrounded by it is the Catskill Mountains and the just 3,000 bodies of water that are under the Constitution protected as forever wild. And so what the organization does, in addition to doing educational programming, for instance, how to do outside wilderness survival and carry out, and how to use the outdoors responsibly, does a lot of litigation and advocacy work and lobbying in the Capitol for laws to continue to protect New York's wildlands.
And you're looking forward to being involved in that?
Yeah, this is, I hope to bring as much enthusiasm and energy to the second half of my career as I brought to the first. And I think the way to do that is to marry my skill set with my personal interests. And running around in the Adirondacks doing endurance running races and vacationing with my family and paddling and hiking has been my refuge from my work for close to 20 years.
What do you see as the biggest mark you made on the public defender's office during your time here?
Yeah, I think I have an Army background, and I feel very strongly, unapologetically so, that you take care of those who take care of the mission. And I think in the past, public defenders, not just in Missouri but elsewhere, have been very sheepish and almost apologetic for our existence. You break out a copy of the Bill of Rights and you realize that 40%, 4 out of the first 10 of those rights, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth, and the Eighth Amendments, you can't exercise without a criminal defense lawyer. And what our framers were worried about is government taking away people's liberties without protections. And that's what we're here for. And it's not a liberal thing. It's as old and time honored as our Constitution and our framers, and we shouldn't frankly be apologetic for it. And every time I see a legislator who's got the American flag lapel pin on his suit, claims he loves the Constitution, but votes against funding for us, I want to rip that lapel pin off his jacket because he's full of it. And he needs to be reminded, no, we're here to protect people's liberty. You're not doing it. And I think that getting the backs of the lawyers who are threatened in court by judges with contempt and other such things for not taking an endless number of cases where we can't be effective on any of them is kind of what I brought to the table. It's not being apologetic for what we do. It's raising awareness for not just the constitutional side, but the benefit that we bring to the state, that before someone's liberty is taken away, that they get their due process, and that if someone who's poor is charged with the same types of things that other people who have means or access to resources are charged with, that the outcomes in their cases do not look disparate. You know, that someone who's a junior in college whose dad's or mom has access to money and is charged with a drug possession, well, that person's sentence should not look significantly different from a poor person's similar charge. And too often it does. You know, we're seeing just now with the reason why it's in the headlines, these rich people who are charged in the college admissions scandal, because traditionally they're not charged with offenses even though they break the law. They find ways out of it, and this time they were not finding a way out of it. But if you look at the sentences they get, a couple of days in jail. I'm reminded of the young single mom from Ohio, African American woman who put her daughter on a different school bus because it was a better school district than the one she lived in, and she's still serving incarceration several years later for that offense. And so every day that we're able to narrow the gap between the type of justice that rich people enjoy from the type of justice that is imposed upon poor people, we've done our job. And I think over the last few years we've done a pretty good job narrowing that gap.
What was your woke moment in your life that led you to develop this strong sense of injustice, or the strong sense of fighting injustice? What was the pivot there?
Yeah, it's strange. I wish I could point to something, because I am kind of a strange duck, and that I'm not motivated by the same things that other people seem to be motivated by, and you know, this is a bio a little bit, so I'll get into it. I'm a Christian, and I believe that we should not do things for our own self-advancement. And I feel very strongly that it's a blessing to be put in a position of leadership, and I'm not going to squander it for self-advancement when I have the ability to make lives a little bit better for people who are not empowered to be advocates for themselves. And so I've regretted only things that I have not done that I knew I should be doing, and I have never regretted things that I've done when I know they were the right things to do, even though I've taken a little bit of a beating.
I want to touch a little bit on Hinklebein and the decision. You know, the ACLU, I talked to Tony about this, and I've read through most of the documents. You know, he always billed this as a friendly lawsuit. I don't think the ACLU had any ill intent in this. Is that accurate?
Well, my name's on the other side of the V as a defendant, so I got to go to bed with that every night. But I'm happy to be there because it's my obligation under state statute to carry out the state's responsibility to provide competent and constitutional representation for poor people. When we're not able to do so because of the number of clients, we haven't been shy about that. So the failings that we've been accused of have been the ones that I've been saying in the press for 4 years now. So I can't say that what's being alleged in the lawsuit is inaccurate. And I happen to be on the other side of the V. I guess a friendly lawsuit's no different than friendly fire. It's still going to have take its toll. But we've had to fight. We've had to defend ourselves in this lawsuit, and we've done so, I believe, competently and to the best of our ability. But I don't have much in the way of defense when I've been saying the very same things publicly for 4 years.
When you leave, what does the future hold? Do you think your successor will pick up the reins on that? And do you think they'll move forward? Or do you think we're going to go back to the same milquetoast attitude where nothing happens, nothing changes?
So one of the reasons I was open to leaving was because I had 3 goals that I wanted to achieve. I wanted to raise the salaries for everyone in the system, and not because we wanted to enrich ourselves, but that was leading to excessive turnover. And when you have excessive turnover, you have people going out without their lawyer for some period of time. So we did that. I wanted to bring back the juvenile divisions, which we had to get rid of in the 2007, and we're back to representing juveniles around the state. We did that last year. And caseload was the last thing. And we submitted back in early spring a proposed settlement in the ACLU lawsuit that would establish caseloads so that we can provide constitutional representation. And I feel that at this point, either that settlement's going to be approved or it's not going to be approved. And there's nothing I can really do about it at this point. We have a hearing set for next week. Our counsel, Greg Mermelstein, is going to go argue in favor of the consent judgment. But if that gets approved and it withstands appeal, then we will have caseload limits, which would be a huge thing, which would certainly, to your earlier point, be a legacy achievement. And so that would avoid us slipping back. But I think what I provided, and I hope it's long lasting, is a continued is a playbook for fighting these things, that it's our obligation under the rules of professional conduct to tell the trial court. And if they say no, you're in it anyway, well, either the court's going to impose the case on us and threaten contempt, or they're not. And if the court imposes contempt, I think the court's committing a ethical violation, and we should file that complaint with the appropriate authorities. And so our people know now that that this is the remedy that's left available to them, and I just hope they use it. That's up to them.
Your appointment of then Governor Jay Nixon to serve in the role of a public defender. I know you've done interviews on this in the past, but now you're leaving. What can you tell readers about your thoughts behind that decision? What led to it? What was going through your mind when you said, you know what, I'm going to do this to make a point?
So, I remember the thought process to a certain extent. Some of it's cloudy. It was a busy time. One of the pieces of rationale that I used was a legal one. And if we're going to go to court and say we need relief because we have excessive caseloads and it's leading to unconstitutional representation, what a court is going to say is, have you exhausted all the other legal remedies that are available to you? That's what a court does. Before the court steps in and says, here, I'm going to do something about it, have you tried everything that there is legally to try? And so in thinking about that, I review all the laws, and there's a statute staring me in the face saying that Barrett, as director, you can appoint someone when you're out of money, when you're out of resources. Going back to the early 80s, that's what was done when the public defender system was created. It wasn't given enough money, but the director had the ability to appoint, and courts had the ability to appoint. But why would I appoint a private lawyer who didn't cause this problem and is trying just to keep the lights on in their solo practice? And so I arrived at it not through politics, but began thinking about it from a legal perspective, that I needed to exhaust all my remedies. And only there did it kind of morph into some sort of political maneuver. And look, my aim was not to embarrass the governor. My aim was, hey, if the governor's going to engage in politics to keep us weak so that we can't do our jobs and his friends in the prosecutor's office can have an easy go of it and just get convictions without much effort, well then why am, as a political entity who has to fight for resources in Jefferson City like anyone else, not engaging in the same type of politics? And I think the reason why it was got a lot of attention is for the reasons that I started off saying, that we are typically a sheepish organization. And we just got off the sidelines and entered the political fray. And I think that took a lot of people by alarm. And look, you cannot be a public defender and fight for poor people to the extent that you should without knowing that there's a risk that you can get fired or thrown in jail. People have, and I was okay with getting fired. And I'm okay with being thrown in jail as long as it's for the right reasons. So I knew what the right thing to do was. I knew what the ramifications were. And it was, and I was willing to take it. Did I know what the response was going to be? And that I would get emails and calls from people in Germany and Korea and certainly the 50 states, and no, I had no idea. But it was nice, but it certainly wasn't what I was after.
Going back, would you make the same call today?
Who knows? I don't like to answer those speculative questions of I do this and I do that. Who knows? I hope that I would do the right thing. I view this job with I take the organizational chart with me on top and I turn it upside down. I would tell them, I saw my role as, how can I serve them each and every day? How can I lighten their load? Because they're doing the job, they're doing the mission, not me. They should demand from their next director that the director gets their back, that they get resources, that they continue to make tomorrow better than today. They shouldn't sit back and let things happen to them. They play a powerful role in the criminal justice system, and they shouldn't sit on the sidelines. They should get involved, and management should get their backs, and they should demand that of the next director.